Welcome to a brand new episode of the Bull Take Podcast. I'm Austin Wader. That's Austin Hill. His team rested from the bye week. As we get ready to talk NFL here on the Bull Take Podcast. If you haven't, go tune into our college football episode. Fun weekend ahead. 5 ranked matchups. You're going to want to tune in. We talk about all that. We also talk about the big games that happened last weekend. Georgia and Texas, Tennessee and Alabama. We could go on and on about it. So make sure and go give that episode a watch and see also who our player and team of the week results were. They might kind of shock you with one of them. One of them might catch you off guard. You won't have to find out to tune in. But this is our NFL episode. Another week of NFL football is in the books. And we got some things to discuss on here, Austin. But before that, as always, we start with our biggest winners and losers from the past week in the NFL. Austin, what you got for your biggest loser?
My biggest loser, I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. I don't think the loss to the Ravens on paper is that bad. It was a 10-point loss, even though the game wasn't super close, really, at most points. Um, it's not just the loss, though, here for me. It's the big-time injuries sustained to Mike Evans and to Chris Godwin. Now, I think Mike Evans, it was just like a hamstring strain, so he'll probably be back this week or next week. I haven't seen anything official, so I'm just kind of freeballing there. But that's what it looked like. But for Godwin, the dislocated ankle, the surgery that's going to do him in for the rest of the season, that really hurts. And while this team's found ways to get success out of guys like Sterling Shepard and Jalen McMillan, uh, it's still tough to not have your two best receivers and two of the best receivers in football to injury. So I think that's where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers really lost out. Was not just losing this game, but losing a lot of key pieces in this game too.
It is, and actually to confirm you on the Mike Evans thing, I am told he is out through until after their bye week, and their bye
Oh,
week's in week 11. So he will not return till week 12, it looks like. So they're going to be without him for a couple of weeks. One of those matchups just happens to be against the only undefeated team left in the NFL. So we'll see how that goes for Tampa Bay. For me, the biggest loser, oh man, there's a couple of good options for it. But if I have to pick one, I would probably have to give it to, wait for it, the New York Giants. Look, this is a simple one with the Saquon Barkley scenario. Um, they had the choice. They had the choice between Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. We all know it's questionable. However you feel about it, there's plenty of different sides to look at it there. But for him to come out and come into the stadium and just flat out dominate you in the game, and you watch your offense struggle. Daniel Jones gets sacked left and right. You can't stop the run game for Philadelphia. It just makes it ultimately even worse. So, yeah, very tough loss for the Giants. I got to go with them as my biggest loser. Now, here's some good options, Austin. What are you feeling about your biggest winner of the week?
I don't like doing this. Everybody knows I don't like doing this, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to say the Green Bay Packers are the biggest winner from this week. They moved to 5-2, and after a rough start to the season, they're starting to look like the team we thought they were going to be. Very competitive, very talented team. Jordan Love is finding the groove after the injury to open up the season. He's finally getting into his groove, and this week they beat a team that's on everybody's list as a Super Bowl contender, not just in the AFC, but in the entire NFL and the Houston Texans. They get it done down to the wire, but they find a way to get it done. Definitely an impressive win for the Green Bay Packers. Probably, maybe the biggest win of the week.
Was definitely one of the biggest ones to me. I'll stay in the NFC North. I'll take the Detroit Lions for it. That was a game we hyped up, wondering how were the Lions going to do without Aiden Hutchinson in this game? How was the defense going to do? Well, the defense wasn't necessarily great. The offense stepped it up in this game and was able to go out and win them this football game. And whenever we talk about Minnesota here in a little bit, that win for Detroit opens up things a lot more in this division as if they already weren't wide open between 4 elite football teams. So, yeah, great win for Detroit. But now let's get to some of the major news, and you hinted at it. The major injury situation going down in Tampa. Mike Evans out until after their bye week in week 11. Chris Godwin out for the year. My question for you, Austin, these injuries, they're going to keep them out for a couple of weeks. Atlanta is right on Tampa Bay's heels. New Orleans and Carolina really aren't there. You never know. Something could change the next couple of weeks. Do you think that this is Atlanta's division to lose or gain a massive advantage over the next couple of weeks with those guys being out?
Yeah, I think Atlanta has to take advantage of this. Look, I'm right now going to remain optimistic. Again, Sterling Shepard has really found his footing in this offense, and I think that has a little bit, obviously, to do with having that chemistry with Baker Mayfield already. They played together in college; they know each other very well. And Jalen McMillan has had like a sneaky, really good year as a rookie. Now those guys are going to have bigger spotlights. Now you're not going to have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin drawing those guys, drawing extra attention. But still, I think that this offense is still going to be good. Clearly, we've seen from Baker Mayfield that he is the quarterback we thought he was coming out of college. So I don't think this team is going to take too many steps back. But yes, absolutely. Atlanta is healthy. Atlanta is the better team now. Atlanta has to take advantage of this moment. Again, it's we say this every year. It feels like this is now Atlanta's division to win if they want it.
Yep. I mean, I've lost track. I feel like we're on repeat whenever we say that because we said that. I think even the last couple of years, I think word for word from both of us was if they wanted to win this division, they would have, but they didn't want to. And it doesn't get any bigger for them. They play Tampa this weekend. So talk about getting a big win on them. That would be massive. And now, other news we're going to talk about another big wide receiver trade occurring in the NFL this week. Austin, I mean, we're still a week or two away from the trade deadline, and we're still getting these massive deals happening in the NFL. But basically, to sum it up, Kansas City Chiefs, as if they weren't undefeated and already got enough weapons, they have traded for DeAndre Hopkins in exchange for a fifth round pick. Look, this is a massive get for Kansas City. Their wide receiver room's questionable. Sky Moore was added to IR, so he's out for 4 weeks. We all know about their other injuries in the wide receiver room and in the running back room was Isaiah Pacheco and Rashee Rice, both of them. How massive is this pickup for Kansas City to go out and get someone like DeAndre Hopkins?
Man, you talk about DeAndre Hopkins. He's just a talented individual, and the meme started with Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes. Tyreek's down there somewhere. Throw it up. This is that same mindset with DeAndre Hopkins, except what he lacks in speed, he makes up for in contested catches. He's probably, I know we call it getting mossed, but I think he's probably the best contested catcher maybe in the history of the NFL. Some of the just absurd catches that DeAndre Hopkins has made in his career with one, two, three guys all over him. I mean, we're talking about pass interference penalties and whatnot. Look, I know they called offensive pass interference on this play I'm about to reference, but the catch between the legs for DeAndre Hopkins that he had when he was in Houston on the, I argue, bogus offensive pass interference. I think if you do something cool enough, you have to pick up the flag. That should be a new rule in the NFL. But he just makes absurd catches. And look, he hasn't seen the same production over the last couple of years, but he's also played for a Tennessee Titans team that hasn't cared about winning or had a really settled quarterback situation. Tannehill wasn't good his last few years there. Levis has clearly struggled, and Malik Willis got like a quarter to prove himself, and then he lost his job. So it's just been up and down turmoil there. I think this is a great move, and I think this is a really good move for the Kansas City Chiefs. Even if DeAndre Hopkins doesn't become the DeAndre Hopkins we all know from back in his Houston days, or even when he was with the Cardinals, he was a great Cardinal. I think people just forget that he was really good then.
Murray, anybody?
Yeah, that's something when DeAndre Hopkins gets some of the slander, and when Kyler Murray gets a ton of slander. Do we forget what happened like the 2 years that those guys played together? They were a nightmare for football. You couldn't stop DeAndre Hopkins, and Kyler Murray was so crafty that he just ran around until he felt like he could get the ball to Hopkins. So even if he doesn't live up to that potential, still he's a talented receiver. Still he's got experience, and still he improves this receiving core that is tattered and broken. Look, the Chiefs obviously have seen that. Look, they haven't really decisively won that many games. They know they need to step up. They know that this is going to be a tough year in the NFL. And just like everybody else that's making these moves right now, with all these trades heating up, I think it's because the NFL is so even this year. And I don't mean that to say that the Chiefs are a bad, undefeated team, but there are just a lot of good teams out there. And everybody knows that they need to make an improvement if they want to win the Super Bowl. And so I like this move by the Chiefs, not being content at being 6-0, going out, getting aggressive, getting one of the best receivers in football, and making your team better and getting ready to try and win a third Super Bowl in a row.
I'm right with you. This is a really good move. And also, the thing to me is, look, if you look at the stats for the Chiefs offensively, like you mentioned, they have not been that impressive offensively. If I'm correct, I believe Patrick Mahomes has more interceptions than touchdowns this year, and they're still 6-0 right now, and they look really good. Now you're giving him someone that gives him the confidence not only to find a go-to receiver, but someone you can rely on deep down the field. That's the main thing that worries me as someone in the AFC that would have to play the Chiefs if they want any success this year. Because if you went in now, Mahomes, we've seen whenever he wants to go down the field like he did with Tyreek Hill, he can do it all the time. Now you're talking about a guy that if Mahomes just sees him one-on-one, he could chuck it 30 yards down the field and be like, about 70, 75, 25% chance he's coming down with that. I mean, so I think it's an absolutely great deal for them, especially with Sky Moore heading to IR. That's a major loss to more depth in that receiver room. And obviously Rashee Rice, of course, suffering the season-ending injury. So, yeah, great deal for them. And listen, while we're on the subject of the Chiefs, we might as well mention the Super Bowl rematch that happened this weekend, a 28-18 win over the Niners. And this is a game neither team really looked good in. Neither offense really looked good in the game. Multiple turnovers by both quarterbacks. And Austin, I said something bold on one of my shows. I'm about to say something bold. You might hate it, but I'm going to say it right now. There is possibility. The Chiefs are undefeated, and you look at the way they played, you're like, how in the world are they undefeated? This team has not played that well offensively. Honestly, they've made so many mistakes, and their defense keeps on bailing them out. They're going to get better as the season goes on, especially getting DeAndre Hopkins. They'll get Isaiah Pacheco back. They'll get Sky Moore more and more. I'm going to just say it. They're on 17-0 watch with me because they are just going to get better as the season gets along. We saw it last year with Mahomes and this offense. At the very end of the season, they started picking things up even more. Now, they might lose a game or two down the line. It would surprise me, though, because their defense is stepping up big time during the early struggles for the offense. You're telling me Mahomes isn't going to get this stuff figured out later in the year with DeAndre Hopkins and Isaiah Pacheco coming back? I'm not saying it'll happen, but I would not be shocked in the world if it did happen, especially if the defense keeps on playing the way it is.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to say that's such a crazy take. I'm kind of in the same school of thought as you. Just watching these games that the Chiefs are playing in, and it's like, if they can't lose now, how can they lose? I mean, they're just not playing up to the level and the expectation that they've set on offense as one of these all-time great offensive units, and yet they are still winning football games. I'm with you. Somebody's gonna have to step up and make something happen, and really take advantage, to beat the Chiefs right now. They look good.
I mean, looking at their schedule, they got the Raiders this week, then the Buccaneers without Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, the Broncos. Really, I'll be honest with you. They should win those three games. They realistically should be 9-0. And then you're playing at Buffalo, which, listen, that's going to be a massive matchup. It always is. That is probably, looking at the rest of their schedule, that and the Texans later in the season are the only two games I look at and say, hey, they could lose that game. The rest of their schedule, I would expect them to win out, honestly. I mean, so they're going to be a tough out, and now getting DeAndre Hopkins to go along with it makes it even more tough. Let's talk about some other games that went on this weekend. How about this one? You mentioned it very lightly, but we'll dive into it. Green Bay beating Houston 24-22. A phenomenal game that went down to the wire. And let me just say, I don't care if everyone thought they looked nice. I hated the Green Bay whiteout jerseys and everything. I hated it. It looked so wrong to me that I was like, throw it out. I never want to see the Green Bay whiteout and the white helmets and a whiteout crowd at Lambeau Field. It just looked wrong to me, just to be honest with you. It looked so wrong. But nonetheless, a big win for Green Bay to move to 5-2, and the Texans fall to 5-2. But they were impressive in this game. Joe Mixon was back healthy. But the big thing that I took away from it, Houston's offensive line had struggles in this game protecting CJ Stroud, and it showed throughout most of the second half.
Yeah, look, both teams played pretty well. I like I said, I really like the way that Green Bay played in this one, but it just feels like right now, just some small things is what's kept this Houston Texans team from being undefeated. It's just they're not doing the little things right. They just kind of feels like they're getting too ahead of themselves right now. And they're in some big games, but I like this team still. I'm sold on this team, and I think they're going to get better. Like only 5-2. But I think they're just a couple plays away from being undefeated in this one. So I like the Texans. I like this game. Man, they're just going to be two incredibly tough teams to stop as the season goes on.
Yeah, I mean Texans still looking like the top team in the AFC South. Packers, we know what they're going to be able to compete for in the NFC North. Speaking of the NFC North, we mentioned real quickly Detroit, Minnesota. Detroit win that game 31-29 over the Vikings. This was a great game overall from both sides, really excellent performances from the star players. But the difference to me was the experience in those big games in that scenario for Jared Goff and them, I think was the difference in this game. Besides that, I mean, it was a competitive game all through and through that I really didn't want to end and ended with a Jake Bates field goal, a former Razorback kicker, shout out Razorback, to get the win there for the Lions. And as if this division was already tight as it is, now you throw this into the wrench, a really gritty win by the gritty Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I don't love the way this division's shaken up as a Bears fan. I thought, we'd at least have a break from the Vikings because they didn't have JJ McCarthy. But look, this is just how it is. Suffering from success in the NFC North, unfortunately. Look, it's tough because I'm worried about what's going to happen once division play comes. For the Bears, most of those division games are at the very end of the season. And that's going to be big make or break time for us. That means that we're going to have to win all these games. And it's going to be a lot of pressure to put on a rookie quarterback, but look, like you said, this was a thrilling game. This was a fun game going on at the same time as the Vikings Texans game. I was trying to flip back and forth between these two games, trying to catch the ending, and I ended up missing the ending to both of them because of that. Because I made some blunders in the way that I went about doing it. So, man, it's a fun division. These are some fun teams. But it is interesting to see Detroit be the first team to get to the Minnesota Vikings this year.
Yeah, it really isn't. I'm just saying, red zone's your winner. I got Hulu where I don't got a Sunday ticket or anything. I just have NFL Red Zone from NFL Network. That has been my lifesaver because that was how I was able to see both of them for that one. It wasn't super expensive. I forget how much it was because I got it 2 years ago. So I forget how officially I was, but it's a lifesaver. I'm telling you. You can watch it on your phone too. It is a lifesaver. Um, but now we're going to talk about one more game before we mention what happened last night in Thursday Night Football. Steelers taking down the Jets 37-15. I mean, just a dominating performance by the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Russell Wilson, his first start, he went out after a slow start and went out and was able to make some big throws down the field. And that truly was the difference. Along with that, some defensive plays by the Steelers that we come to expect from them. But listen, I'll just get my take out of the way, and then you will have the floor. Um, to me, this is huge for the Steelers because they have an ability to throw the football down the field. Russell Wilson. No discredit to Justin Fields at all, but they seem to, as an offense coordinator from Arthur Smith, have more tendency to throw the football down the field or take those chances with Russell Wilson than Justin Fields, just based on that one game. And not only does that happen, when you're able to throw the ball deep with success, it opens up the run game. And even though we weren't able to have Justin Fields help run the ball, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren were able to be successful running the ball. And it just got in the hands of the playmakers. George Pickens had a big game. Pat Fryermuth. Darnell Washington was finally getting involved in the offense, which was about dang time. So,
Yeah.
it's still an interesting QB situation to say the least. But in my opinion, if we want to have a more balanced offense and an actual ability to pass the ball down the field, based on this week, and obviously that could change, in a week or two whenever they play the Commanders and the Ravens and the Browns in a couple of weeks. Um, but the passing game really impressed me with the Steelers in this game.
Yeah, it was unfortunate for me as a Justin Fields stan to watch how well Russell Wilson played in the second half. As I messaged you as the first half ended, I really hate that Russell Wilson threw that touchdown at the end of the first half because that meant that there was no chance that they were going to put Justin Fields in at halftime, which I was thinking they might have actually done leading up to that. It wasn't that Russell Wilson was playing so bad, but he wasn't playing great. He definitely wasn't throwing the ball efficiently, and they weren't having a lot of success on offense. And I was like, okay, maybe they're going to bring Justin Fields in and he's going to shine and he's going to earn that starting spot finally. And then Russell Wilson threw the touchdown pass, and I was like, well, he's at least going to have to wait another quarter, and by then he's probably going to heat up. But yes, as a Steelers fan, you've got to be excited to see this. I think in the second half, the offense looked really, really good and really dismantled this Jets defense. It looked really good to start the season. Of course, I think another again, big issue. I'm going to keep harping on this. Reason why this defense looks so much worse is because the guy that was calling the defense isn't there anymore. It's almost like he wasn't the problem, and maybe Aaron Rodgers and his buddies are the problem. To quote a tweet I saw after this game ended, that I'm sure a lot of people saw was, "We're just one more Aaron Rodgers friend away. We're just one more Aaron Rodgers friend away," which is probably the mentality you need to have at this point because clearly that's the only Aaron Rodgers is the guy calling the shots. If it hasn't become obvious, so sorry, Ziggy
Yeah,
just barked and that scared me.
yeah. No,
That to everybody, but yeah, I like the way the Steelers looked. I think the Jets looked bad, which just makes sense because they threw out the guy that was doing all the good stuff for them. So Steelers good, Jets bad. That's my expert opinion.
I like that opinion. That's a very good opinion, Austin. But listen, Wilson still got a couple weeks. They got the Giants, and then they got the Commanders before they go into that gauntlet of the second half of the season that I have been dreading them like no other. Whenever that schedule came out. But if they win against the Giants, they'll be 6-2. They'll get a bye week, and then if they beat the Commanders, and that's a big if, way more of a big if than I thought at the start of the season. Um, then you're looking at 7-2, and you enter that stretch feeling more confident that your chances to make the playoffs are better. I think if you're going 6-3, I'm a little worried. I'm a little more worried than I am at 7-2. So, but the Steelers offense, we'll see what they look like against the Giants this week. Let's now get to Thursday night football that occurred last night. A thrilling game between the Rams and the Vikings. And totally didn't have any controversy at all in the game at the end.
Oh,
But just looking at the overall picture before we go to that, Rams winning 30-20. The big story from this game, Puka Nakua, Cooper Kupp were back on the field together, and it showed how different this offense is and how different this Rams team is when they are both out there and healthy. And that really showed in the play of Matthew Stafford, too. And for the Vikings, they started the game out really strong, and then the offense just struggled to get going with the passing game. The run game wasn't really able to do much, and they really just struggled the rest of the way. And then, of course, down by 8 late, the no call face mask that resulted in the safety, where the ref said there's no clean look at the penalty, even though there were two refs on each side of the play where you could see the face mask very clearly. And then the Rams, Byron Young, putting his hands over his face if that doesn't explain that he thought he had a face mask, I don't know what does. But a big win for the Rams. Their second in a row puts them at 3-4 and went from a season where you wonder, are they going to look to trade everyone? Is this the start of a tanking year? To now they're looking to be competitive and compete in this NFC West.
yeah. Look, I'm gonna go probably end up on a little tangent here. But look, just to start, the NFC West played around way too much. I get that the San Francisco 49ers have been hurt, and the Seahawks, maybe weren't as good as we expect as they started the season out to be. But look, Seattle was what 3-0, 4-0 to start the season,
Yeah,
and now they're
3-0.
4-3. They've let the Rams in here. They got hurt They were struggling, they were down, they were broken, they were beaten, and they've let them hang around. And now they've got their pieces back. They've waited, got their guys back, and now they're back to competing. And another note here, there's been a lot of talk about Jared Goff this year, and rightfully so. He's had a phenomenal year. He had a phenomenal year last year. He's been leading the Lions. But a lot of people have been talking about this trade that the Lions and the Rams made for Stafford for Goff and all the picks and whatnot, and saying how this deal is just starting to look worse and worse. They gave up on Jared Goff. And sure, I get it. They may have unfairly given up on Jared Goff. But still, to this day, I think the Rams have won the trade. They traded Jared Goff for Stafford and instantly won a Super Bowl. The Lions have still not done that. So I don't think that there's a comparison there. Great for Jared Goff that he's had a winning season, but the Rams were on the doorstep of winning a Super Bowl so many times, and they couldn't do it with Goff. And in their first year with Matthew Stafford, they did it. So I hate that conversation. And it is no offense to Jared Goff. I think he's really done a great job redeeming himself and reviving himself in Detroit, and he's had a great season. But I don't think that should overshadow the fact that the Rams won a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford, and now with all their pieces back, Stafford is playing at his best again, and this team looks like a competitive football team that might just come back and win this division.
Right, and that's a very fair argument. Listen, to me, I know the Rams got Super Bowl, so I would give them a little bit more of an advantage to this trade too. But it has been a pretty evenly distributed trade for the most part. I would say like 55-45, maybe to the Rams for that Super Bowl win. I'd absolutely give them that. But looking at just this division as a whole in the NFC West, I mean, not only the Rams, they let the Cardinals into it too. They've got a couple of wins there. So now the current division standings in the NFC West, Seahawks in first at 4-3, Cardinals, Rams, and 49ers in a three-way tie for second at 3-4. So that division, along with the NFC North, are just insanely competitive right now. I mean, this is awesome from a just non-biased perspective. Obviously, you being an NFC North fan for the Bears, it might be a little bit more stressful in that aspect. But it's great seeing two divisions like this. And you mentioned with the Rams, they're now getting healthy. They're getting everyone back offensively. And if the defense performs like it did for much of the second through fourth quarter of this game last night and play like that the rest of the season, they could absolutely take this division. So, yeah, an absolutely incredible performance there. And then for the Vikings, look, 2 losses in a row. You're behind in the division now. The good news is you're only 5-2. It's not the end of the world. You got a couple games here to build up between when the Colts, Jaguars, and Titans in 3 straight games. That's 3 pretty winnable games that they could go out and do, and you're back in the running for one of the top seeds in the NFC. So these 2 divisions are, man, Austin, they're going to be must watch as we get into the second half of the season.
Yeah, I'm absolutely dreading it, but it makes for some good television, I guess.
And makes for some great podcast content, if I do say so
Yeah.
myself. Yeah, that's how I felt with the AFC North like 2 or 3 years ago when every single team was pretty much a winning record. So, but enough about that. Let's get in some game picks for games that are going to be going down this weekend in the NFL. Our first one coming to you at noon, the 4-3 Colts taking on the 5-2 Texans. Look, the Colts, they haven't really been that impressive, but they're only a game behind the Houston Texans in this AFC South. Houston is looking to make a considerable leap in control of this AFC South and go up by multiple games again. Can they do that? Or does Anthony Richardson and the Colts or the elite Joe Flacco have something in store?
I think the Colts are getting better, and I think they're figuring stuff out. I think obviously their biggest thing is not having a ton of consistency at quarterback, just with Richardson getting knocked out of games and Flacco having to come in. I think that can mess with the flow. I think this game's going to be close, but I like the Texans. I just think they're the better team. I think they've got the pieces to limit and stop this Colts offense. And I think this offense for the Texans is virtually unstoppable, especially when Joe Mixon gets going and they've got everything going, in all the layers of the game. So I'm going to go with the Texans in this one, but I think it's going to be a very close game.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be a close game as well. Let's move on to the next one. We talked about it. Huge game in the NFC South. Falcons traveling to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. Both teams 4-3. It's simple. Winner of this one, first place in the NFC South. A massive one going down in Tampa Bay. How do you see this one playing out, Austin?
I honestly like the Falcons in this game. I think the Buccaneers are going to find their footing for these next couple weeks, even with some of their big names out. But I think this first week with the injuries and kind of taking a demoralizing beating against the Ravens, I think they're going to have some struggles, and I think the Falcons are going to be able to take advantage and get a big win to take the lead in this division.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder. I think back to last year, really. Atlanta going on the road and stunning Tampa Bay in a fashion like that. I could see a very similar thing happening here with all those injuries happening. So it comes down to Baker Mayfield. If it's the Baker Mayfield, like we saw from last week, that when those guys got injured, he turned the ball over, this is definitely a win for Atlanta. If he now has a week knowing that he's got to rely on other guys, maybe he goes out and performs well. But I'm going to take Atlanta in the game. Like I said, like I mentioned, this is their chance to get control of this division over these next couple of weeks with those top two receivers being out. But next game, Philadelphia at Cincinnati, a massive one here. The Eagles 4-2, but let's face it, probably one of the more unimpressive 4-2s in the NFL. A lot of questions still about this Philadelphia Eagle football team. And speaking of a team with questions, you got the Cincinnati Bengals. They start 1-4. Now they've won two in a row in really ugly games against the Giants and Browns. But now, with the win in this game, would put themselves back into that discussion for a playoff picture. Big one going down in Cincinnati on Sunday, Austin. Who do you like here?
I don't know why, but I'm going to go with Cincinnati in this one. Look, they've strung together a couple wins, and they're not great wins against not so great teams. But I think that still builds confidence. That still shows you can find a way to get it done. T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are really starting to lock in, especially T. Higgins. Joe Burrow is showing that he can get the ball to those guys and have some success. I like the Bengals in this one.
All right. You literally stole bar for bar, word for word, what I was going to say. Because I'm going to pick Cincy, and my reasoning was yours. Even though they looked ugly in those two games, all that Cincy needs is that confidence of wins. That's how it was 2 years ago and last year. Whenever they started slow, they got some really ugly wins in some games, and then they went out and got on a hot streak in winning games. And I think you'll see that in this game against the Eagles. And then the main afternoon game. How about this, Austin? 4-2 Chicago Bears, 5-2 Washington Commanders. A thrilling matchup that's going to go down. The big question in this game is the two rookie quarterbacks. And if we're going to see both rookie quarterbacks, obviously Jane Daniels suffering that rib injury. They're saying he's questionable for this game on Sunday. What are you thinking in this matchup, Austin? Because this is obviously a big one for the Bears to keep up with the top teams in that NFC North.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Certainly, this is going to be a great game. But I think the Bears' defense is what sets us apart. I think whether Jaden Daniels plays or not, we're going to win. But I think if we face off against Marcus Mariota instead, I think there'll be a little bit more success there. Not that Marcus Mariota is a bad backup quarterback there for the Commanders, but look, I think obviously Jaden Daniels is a better quarterback. But I like this defense. I think they're going to limit and contain this explosive offense. This secondary showed that even outside of the top guys in the secondary, that they can get the job done. That's what they did against Jacksonville before the bye week. And so I think that it's going to be really hard to throw the ball and get those big chunk plays against this defense. And the offense gets better and better every week. I think the real battle is going to be, can Washington's defense hold up the Chicago offense with the way it's been rolling recently? I think that's going to be the most interesting part of this game. I'm obviously going to pick the Bears in this one. Go Bears.
Okay. Listen, it's very simple for me. I'm expecting both offenses to really do well in this game. Even if Mariota plays, we saw that they at least got some practice of him playing most of the game last week against Carolina. Even though it was against Carolina, they have some experience with him playing with the first team guys in somewhat of an aspect of that. So either way, I expect it to be a good game. But my reasoning, similar to what you just said, is the defenses. And I think it comes down to that. I trust that Chicago defense more than that Washington defense. I'm expecting a pretty high scoring game. But if I had to rely on one defense to make a stop at the end, I'm going to lean Chicago's way. But I'm expecting this to be a great game no matter which quarterback is playing in this game. I'm expecting a good amount of points either way. And then Sunday Night Football, the last game we're going to talk about, two teams that I think it's safe to say are desperate for this game. You have the 3-3 Dallas Cowboys and the 3-4 San Francisco 49ers on Sunday Night Football. Look, both teams need this game. There's no other way for me to hype it up. The Niners, obviously, with the injury to Deebo Samuel, who had pneumonia this week. I don't know if he's going to play. Brandon Ayuk's out for the year. You still don't know about Christian McCaffrey. And with Dallas, look, I could go into detail for 10 minutes about Dallas and their situation and what this game could mean to them. But I'm going to save us the time. And Austin, who is more desperate for the win, but also who you got here?
Boy, I don't know who's more desperate. That's not a question I don't think I can answer. Both of these teams are pretty desperate. My big thing here is, look, I was just saying a couple weeks ago, or maybe even last week, the Niners are looking better. They're getting pieces back. They're playing well. They're finally able to put it together, and now they're losing all those pieces again, which is just completely unbelievable. But at the same time, Dallas just does not have a starting defense. Their starting defense is almost entirely gone. Uh, I'm going to ride with the 49ers in this one. I just think that if I had to pick one of these teams to get it done, I'm going to pick the 49ers. Shanahan finds a way to get guys in this offense who can play at any position that just fit his scheme. I'm going to trust that guy over Mike McCarthy to figure out how to get this team a win.
Okay. That was literally my if I had to ask which team is more desperate, I would honestly say the 49ers because I think their division as a whole is more talented than the NFC East. So I think Dallas can make up some ground in division games. The Niners, look, the Cardinals have been proven to be tough. They beat you already this year. The Rams are getting healthy. The Seahawks just dominated the Falcons. They're starting to get more confidence again. To me, the Niners are the more desperate team. And like you said, if I had to pick a coach in this matchup that I trust, I'm going to lean on Shanahan way more than I am Mike McCarthy. So, yeah, I'm going to take the Niners to win this game. I think it'll be a physical game. It's going to be tough, but I think it'll be a Niners win. And just breaking news into it for the Niners, Jawan Jennings is now expected to be out with an injury. So now you look at Deebo Samuel might not play. You got Brandon Ayuk out for the year, and now Jawan Jennings is out. Now that wide receiver room is getting thin. I mean, Austin, who they got left at wide receiver besides Ricky Pearsall, the rookie, who really hasn't gotten a lot of big playing time. Besides him, I really don't know anyone else in that receiver room.
Neither do I. Maybe I need to make a flight out to San Francisco to put a tryout in
Yeah.
for.
Hey, just throw it up. I got you, coach. Just throw it up. I got you. But anyway, that'll be interesting to see how that game plays out. I expect it to be an ugly football game, to say the least. But now, Austin, it is time for the bets of the week. And my bet of the week last week was absolutely brutal. We're going to bounce back, I know for sure. Psych, Chiefs covered. They got it done. Never doubt Patrick Mahomes as an underdog. It was the easiest bet of all time. So, yeah, I'm feeling confident. But enough about me, Austin. What's your bet of the week here for week 8 in the NFL?
Well, I didn't have such a good week last week. The Jacksonville Jaguars remembered how to play offense, and they scored a lot of points on a bad New England team.
Can't believe the over hit in London. It never hits in London.
Yeah,
I can't believe it.
Sick to my stomach. But this week I'm going to go with one that's probably like taking candy from a baby. That's how I would describe this entire game that's going to be played. But I'm going to take the Broncos minus 11 versus the Carolina Panthers. Look, you don't see spreads this big in the NFL very often. 11 is sizable. And if you watch our college football episodes, you know I like a big spread, usually in the favor of the underdog, though. But in this one, I like 11 for the Denver Broncos. I think they're finally starting to find a groove with Bo Nix, and they're playing against probably the worst and least talented team in the NFL.
Okay. So my bet of the week's an interesting one because I'm going solely off a stat that I found this week, and I'm curious to see if it works out. Since October 2021, Kyler Murray has not won consecutive starts as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Since
Uh,
October 2021, he has struggled to win consecutive games, and Tua's coming back healthy for this game. I'll take Miami. I'm going to take Miami minus 4.5. I'm going to think they go out there and cover that because it's clear. I don't know if this is true, but I'm just going to play it and see if I am truly a jinx here and Kyler Murray finally gets back-to-back wins. But it'll be
yeah,
interesting to see Tua come back for Miami in this game. So why not? Give me Dolphins minus 4.5 as my bet of the week. Besides the Steeler under, that Steelers Giants game is going to suck on Monday night. You take
yeah.
the under and you don't think about it.
Well, I'll say this too. The new Call of Duty just came out as well. That doesn't go necessarily in the Cardinals.
Ah, hey, there you go. Hey, sponsor. He got a sponsorship with them too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's setting up. You think?
I mean, I hope not because I like Kyler Murray and he's my fantasy quarterback. And one of
Same
my
here. Same here.
so I would like him to play well, but odds are not necessarily in his favor here.
Yeah, my two fantasy quarterbacks are Kyler and Caleb Williams. I honestly think I'm going to have to lean with Caleb Williams this week. Like the second or third time I've gone with him this year.
I have a league like that where I have Kyler and Caleb Williams, if you believe that. And I actually might be starting Caleb Williams this week.
Okay. You heard it here first. Quarterback changes on the fantasy rosters. There's your breaking news. But last thing I want to talk about has nothing to do with NFL. It's something that we were absolutely disappointed that it happened. But the World Series starts tonight of the night we're recording this. It's Yankees and Dodgers.
I'm
Yes,
about
we
to,
are all
I'm
disgusted
about
by
to,
it.
I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it.
All
I'm
right.
le-
Just give me a pick and how many games. That's all we have to say on it. Just give me that.
I'm gonna say Yankees in four. Anthony Rizzo hits a walk-off home run in all four games.
Beautiful, beautiful. You know what? I'll just take Yankees in six. I'll take Yankees in six. Let's have at least somewhat of a good series. But I am a National League fan. I will not root for the Dodgers. If I had to choose between the two of them, I'm going to root towards the Yankees more than the Dodgers. But I just root for both teams to lose, if we're being honest here.
Yeah, me too. I'm hoping. Well, I'm not gonna say that because that's kind of hateful. Um, I can't go that. It's Aaron Rodgers isn't playing in the World Series, so I'm not gonna say it. If Aaron Rodgers is playing in the World Series, I'd probably say it.
So if
Just
Aaron Rodgers is at the World Series wearing a Yankees hat, what are you doing then?
You know what? I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that one because that's who I'll be cheering for. Anthony Rizzo plays for the Yankees, so I'm gonna give him that.
All right. But yeah, had to throw that in there just for fun because we had talked about the MLB postseason. So yeah, we're both disappointed, but hopefully it at least turns into a good series or something, maybe. But that's gonna do it for this episode of the Bold Take Podcast. Make sure go watch our college football episode. Get you ready for a fun Saturday that could be full of some upsets that could happen, that could alter conferences. And who knows what else could happen there. We'll have NFL and college football next weekend. We had the confirmation and the college football episode. An NBA episode is coming out next week. We already talked a bit about the Bulls and the Pacers. Pacers play the Knicks tonight, so I'm confident they're going to go in and handle business. Tyrese Halliburton owns the Knicks. The Pacers own the Knicks. It doesn't matter.
Hicks versus Knicks, baby.
You already know it. I watched Winning Time last night to solely prepare for this game. But
That's
that's going to be it for this episode of the Bold Take Podcast. Y'all have a great sports weekend. Make sure and join us next week. That's Austin Hill. I'm Austin Wader, and we want to thank you for watching.